Hello and welcome to another episode of Maths with Mrs. Banks, where we make maths fun and easy to learn. And in this video, we're going to look at how to solve quadratic equations for mathematics grade 10. On that note, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on new videos we upload in the future. Also, like this video and share it with all your friends on all social media platforms. And if you have any questions or would like to make a video request, please comment down below with the topic and grade you'd like me to cover, or alternatively send that information to the contact details provided in the description box. Now back to the video. In detail, we're going to look at quadratic equations that come in a standard format. You'll see what a standard format looks like in a few seconds. The next thing we're going to look at is quadratic equations that come in a variation of that standard format. You'll be able to spot it and fix it and solve it. Now, the third thing we're going to look at is quadratic equations that come in a form of a simple fraction. You'll be able to spot that and solve it. The fourth method we're going to look at is when you're dealing with quadratic equations that come in a complicated manner, where we've got another expression embedded in your main quadratic equation. And we're going to use the K method to solve that, and I'll show you how the K method works. Lastly, we're going to look at quadratic equations that come in a complex fraction, where you've got your denominator as another algebraic expression, which requires you to first factorize in order to solve the equation. We have a lot to cover, so let's start. Before we delve into this bit, let's look at what a standard form quadratic equation looks like. It looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, where your a, b, and c are basically numbers, or what we call constants, that form part of the equation. Now let's look at the most basic standard form type of quadratic equation you'll ever find. For example, 3x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals to 0. The first thing you do here is you factorize. Factorize the left-hand side, obviously. You'll need two brackets, two pairs of brackets. If you need help with factorization, I did a whole video on how to factorize for grade 10. It deals with everything from your linear algebraic expressions to quadratic algebraic expressions to even cubic algebraic expressions, and how to factorize that from your difference of two squares. Everything you need to know about factorization is on that video. Go watch it and come back with a better understanding of how to factorize, because factorization is a requirement. In order for you to be able to factorize, you need that knowledge. Now what you do is you now find factor pairs for the first term and the last term. The first term is easy to find the factor pair, that is 3 times 1. Then you've got x and x. Then you've got, for the last one, it's 1 times 1. So you go 3x in one bracket and x in the other. 1 and 1. Now the question is, what are the signs in the brackets going to be? Notice that you've got a negative on the last term, meaning that you will need either a positive and a negative. You will need a positive and a negative to achieve that. However, you've got a positive in the middle. How do you then decide where to put your plus and where to put your minus? If you've got a positive in the middle, what you do is you put your biggest factor terms that you multiply together and have that be plus, positive, so that at the end of the day, your answer is now positive. When you've got a big positive number and you add it to a small negative number, the resulting number is positive, and that's how you achieve that. You can check it. Go through that video I just told you about now on how to factorize, and you'll be able to see exactly how we do this in detail. Now the next thing you do is you equate each of the factors to 0. Why? Because the only way you can multiply two entities together and get a 0 is if either one of them is 0 or both of them are 0 at the same time. So you've got 3x minus 1 equals to 0, and then you go ahead and solve like you would in an equation. If you have issues with solving equations and how to solve if they come in tricky manner, there's a video I also did on basics on how to solve equations. Go watch that and come back to this video with a better understanding of how to do that. Now you go 3x equals to take everything to the right hand side that is not x, that is 1. Or x equals to, take everything that is not x to the right hand side, it becomes negative 1. Remember, when you cross the equal line border, you must change the sign. So if you take anything across the equal line border, whether it's to the right or to the left, it must change the sign that it originally had before it crosses the border. And therefore, divide both sides by 3 to get 3x on its own, and that gives you x equals to 1 over 3. So the answer is x is equals to 1 over 3 or x equals to negative 1. And that's it. Next, you've got the type where it's a standard form but a variation of the standard form. Notice that you've got your x squared, the coefficient of x squared is a negative number. We don't need that. We need to have the coefficient of x squared as a positive number. How do you do that? Either you take out a common factor with a negative number, or just take a minus 1, or take everything to the other side. In this case, I choose to take everything to the left hand side because then it automatically changes. It's fine. Now what you do is, now you have a common factor 2 that you need to take out. Take that common factor out. Very important. Makes factorization and everything a lot easier when you've got the common factor taken out. Divide both sides by 2. The left hand side will be left with x squared minus 2x plus 1. And the right hand side will be 0 divided by 2, which is basically 0. So just leave it as 0. Now you factorize. X squared minus 2x plus 1. Now you factorize. 2 brackets. We've got plus 1. And then x squared. X squared is easy. That is x and x. We've got minus 2x and plus 1. Minus in the middle and positive on the outside. The last term means that you'll have 2 negatives on the brackets. There's no way we can manipulate the factors of 1, so that's the only thing we can have. Now let's check. X times x, that's x squared. Negative 1 times negative 1, that's positive 1. And in the middle, minus 1, that is negative 2. So yes, it checks out. Now what you do is you equate just one of these factors to 0. Reason being that it's a duplication. It's exactly the same thing. There is absolutely no need for you to do a double take here. You can just work with one of these factors. Therefore, x equals to 1. And that is your answer. Next type of question is where you've got a simple fraction. Comes in a fractional format. Now, whenever you're dealing with common fractions, remember, from primary school, always think lowest common denominator. So that's the first thing you need to think about, lowest common denominator. How do we find that? If you're not sure what the lowest common denominator will look like, anything that does not have a number as a denominator designated, like for example y minus 3, that is all over 1. So that has a denominator of 1. So now what you do is, because you've got numbers and variables all as denominators, what you do is you just multiply all of them together. So you go 1 times 4 times y, and that will give you 4y. That is your lowest common denominator. Now what you do is you multiply each and every one of these fractions by your lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator is 4y. Okay, you're gonna multiply that. Alright, let's get back to the color. My color, love this color. Alright, now let's go. Now you go, that is y minus 3 equals to, that is 4 over 5, so the 5 over 4, 5 over 4, and that is minus 1 over y. Alright, now we simplify. How do we simplify? The 4 here cancels with that 4. The y cancels with that y. They all give you 1, 1. 4 goes into 4 once, y goes into y once, and all that. That's how you get that. Now, get back to the color. Now you go, therefore, you expand. How do you expand? You multiply out 4y times y, that gives us 4y squared. 4y times negative 3, 4y times negative 3. First multiply the signs together, positive times negative, that gives you negative. 4 times y, the numbers together now, that it gives you 12, and then the y takes along. So that is negative 12y equals to, now notice here that now that you've cancelled the 4 together, cancelled, you left with y times 5, so that gives you 5y. And over here, we cancelled the 4, the y's, we left with 4 times 1, which is minus 4. Now take everything to the left-hand side, 4y squared minus 12y. Remember, when you cross the equal line border, you must change a sign. Sorry, plus 4 equals to 0. Now add like terms. Which ones are the like terms? Negative 12y and minus 5y. Everything else stays the same. Therefore, 4y squared, you've got minus 12 minus 5. That is the same as minus in bracket 12 plus 5. Adding negative signs, that is minus 17. So that is negative 17y. Then the last number is 4 plus 4 equals to 0. Now you factorize. How do you factorize? Easy peasy. Just refer to that video of factorization I told you about. Now we start with the factor pairs of the first term and then the factor pairs of the last term. For the first term, you've got 4 times 1 and 2 times 2 for the numbers. Third variable is y times y. It's very easy. Now for the last term, that's 4 times 1 or 2 times 2. The question is, which combination do we take? We definitely must find a combination of the factors that will give us a 17y, or some number that is close to 17y over there. So which one do we take? 4 times 1 and 4 times 1, because 4 times 4 will give us 16, and then 1 times 1 will give us 1, which makes it 17. 16 plus 1, 17. One way or the other. Forget about the signs. We're not worried about the signs now. We're just worried about the numbers, and then the signs will sort themselves out as long as the numbers are. So that is 4 times y, and y equals to 0. We've got 4 and 1. The 4 must be placed in a manner that makes it possible for you to multiply by the 4. So 4y times 4. Now, where do we put a plus and where do we put a minus? Now, in this case, we've got a minus as the last term. I mean, a positive as a last term. So that means we'll need 2 negatives in order to get a positive, because we have a negative in the middle. So in order to add those 2 negatives to a negative in the middle, they must all be negative. So that is minus and minus. That video will explain exactly how that works. 4y minus 1 equals to 0. Now we equate all the factors to 0. Therefore, 4y equals to 1, or y equals to 4. Therefore, y equals to, divide both sides by 4, that leaves you with 1 over 4. So the answer is y equals to 1 over 4, or y equals to 4. And that's how you solve that. Now, in this case, we've got x plus 1 all squared minus 2 in bracket x plus 1 minus 15 equals to 0. This is the complicated quadratic equation I told you about, where you need to use the K method. Now notice that we've got a commonality here, x plus 1 and x plus 1. Instead of a normal x or y, we've got a whole linear expression, x plus 1. So what we do is we let k equals to x plus 1. Hence the k method. So we substitute. Where there is x plus 1, we substitute k. That will become k squared minus 2k minus 15 equals to 0. Therefore, now this is a much simpler quadratic equation to simplify, factorize. So we've got k and k. Then the factors of 15 are 15 and 1. Then 3 and 5, or 5 and 3. Alright, now the one that can give us, the factor pair that can give us 2 in the middle is the 5 and 3, because 5 minus 3 is equals to 2. Okay, let me fix this 2. So we've got 5 and 3 as our factor pairs. Now, what is the sign? We've got minus as the last term, so obviously we'll have a plus and a minus. Question is, where do we put a plus and where do we put a minus? We've got a minus in the middle. So the best place to put a minus is where we've got the bigger number, the bigger factor, in front of the bigger factor, because when we add them together, when we've got a bigger minus adding with a more positive, it will give you a resultant minus. So the sign in the middle term guides you as to where you put the minus in front of the big number. If it was plus, then you put the plus in front of the big number. Now you equate this to 0. X plus k plus 3 equals to 0. Or k minus 5 equals to 0. Therefore, k equals to negative 3. We're solving for k. K equals to 5. But we're not solving for k here. We're solving for x. So we now must convert the k back to x plus 1 and then solve. So therefore k plus 1, x plus 1 I mean. Therefore x plus 1 equals to negative 3, or x plus 1 equals to 5. Therefore x equals to 3 minus 1, or x equals to 5 minus 1. So that's negative 3 minus 1, x 5 minus 1. You solve like you would any normal equation now. Negative 3 minus 1, that is negative 4. That is your, or x equals to 5 minus 1, that is equals to 4. And that is your answer here. Last example is when you've got that complicated fraction, quadratic expression, quadratic equation. So now what you do is, what you have here is that your denominators are algebraic expressions that can be factorized, that need to be factorized before you can even solve this equation. So what you do, notice that this here is a difference of 2 cubes, I mean a sum of 2 cubes. How do you factorize the sum of 2 cubes? That video will help you. So what you do is you must have a binomial bracket and a trinomial bracket. In the first bracket, you put the square root or the cube root of the first term, which is 27a cubed. So the cube root is 3a. 3a. That is what you put there. And then the next term, you put the cube root of the second term. The cube root of 1 is 1. And then you put a plus. The sign must match the beginning. All right, now what you do, what you put here is the square of this square root, cube root. The square of 3a is 9a squared. So that we've got our 9a squared. And on the last term, we'll put a plus, the square of this second term here. The square of 1 is 1. And in the middle, you put a minus, and then you put a product of the 2, minus the product of the 2, minus the product of the 2. So that becomes 3a times 1. 3a times 1, that is 3a. So you put the minus of the product of that. So that's minus 3a. That's how you factorize your sum of 2 cubes. And that's how you would put it there. So we've got the sum of two cubes factorized, and over here we've got the difference of two squares. 9a squared minus 1, that is the difference of two squares, and the squares are this 9a squared. So when you factorize this, you go the square root of the first term. The square root of the first term is 3a, and the square root of the second term is 1. So you put those in the brackets. Now in one you put plus, and in the other you put minus. Very easy peasy here. Now let's take all this knowledge and apply it to these fractions. Let's simplify the fractions. Now notice something. This one, 9a squared minus 3a plus 1, cannot be factorized. So that still stays the same. That's 3 over 9a squared minus 3a plus 1 minus 3a plus 4 all over. Now we put a factorized sum of two cubes, that is equals to 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Notice already that this one matches with that one, so we sort it, which is equals to, now we've got 1 over the difference of two squares. The difference of two squares is 3a plus 1 and 3a minus 1. Next, therefore, what you do now is you figure out what your lowest common denominator. Remember, when you're dealing with fractions, common fractions, always remember, keep in mind that you will be dealing with the lowest common denominator. What is the lowest common denominator? The lowest common denominator here is basically, you look at your denominators. You've got this, that is a factor. You've got that 3a plus 1, that is a factor. You've got 3a minus 1. So you put a multiple of that. So you go LCD equals to 3a plus 1, 3a minus 1 times, then times the last one is 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. That is the lowest common denominator you must multiply by. Each of these fractions must be multiplied by that. So let's start. The first one, which is 3 in brackets, 3 over 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Let's multiply that by the lowest common denominator. 3 over 9a squared minus 3a plus 1 multiplied by 3a plus 1 times 3a minus 1 times 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Basically what happens is that the 9a minus 3a plus 1 cancel out, and you're left with 3 times this and that. So you go, therefore 3 is multiplied by 3a plus 1 times 3a minus 1. That is your difference of two squares. Next one that will multiply by the, I'm not going to remove everything. 3a minus 1. Okay. All right, now we multiply the next fraction by the lowest common denominator. The next fraction is 3a plus 4 over 3a plus 1 and 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. So that is minus, that is 3a plus 4 over 9a squared minus 3a plus, and then we've got over, I'm not going to write everything. Let me write everything so that everybody can see and not get confused over here. So that is 3a, and then over what? 3a plus 1 and the 9 squared complex one. So that is 3a plus 1 and the 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Multiply that by the lowest common denominator, 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Okay, that thing. So these two cancel out. That one also cancels with this one, so you're left with minus, in bracket 3a minus 1, be careful with the minuses, times 3a plus 4. And that is equals to, the last one is 1 over the difference of two squares. Let's check it out. The last one is 1 over the difference of two squares. Now we'll multiply that by the lowest common denominator, 1 over the difference of two squares. Multiply that by 3a minus 1, 3a plus 1, then 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Okay, this 3a minus 1 cancels with that, and the 3a plus 1 cancels with that. Now you're left with 1 times 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. So that is simply 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. And now, therefore, okay, now let's multiply out this. So that is equals to 3 in brackets. 3a plus 1 times 3a minus 1. That is the difference of two squares. That's 9a squared minus 1. Let me fix that. Minus 1. Minus, okay, 3a minus 1 multiplied by 3a plus 4. That is equals to 9a squared plus 12a minus 3a minus 4. 12a minus 3a, that is 9a squared. So that is 9a squared minus 9a. That is minus 9a squared minus 9a minus 4. Plus 9a, sorry, plus 9a minus 4 equals to, on the right hand side, that is 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Well, okay, let's expand the left hand side. That is 3 times 9a squared, that is 27a squared. 27a squared minus 3. This is what we multiplied out, 27a squared minus 3. Now you take off the brackets, you're left with minus 9a squared minus 9a plus 4, minus 9a squared minus 9a plus 4 equals to 9a squared minus 3a equals to 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. You add like terms on the left hand side, 27a squared minus 9a squared, that is 18a squared. 18a squared. 4 minus 3, that is 1. So, and then minus 9a remains, that plus 1 equals to 9a squared minus 3a plus 1. Take everything to the left hand side. You're left with minus 9a plus 1 minus 9a squared, taking everything to the plus 3a minus 1 equals to 0. Add like terms. 18a squared minus 9a squared, that is 9a squared. 9a plus 3a, negative 9a plus 3a, that is negative 6a. 1 minus 1 is 0, so that is 9a squared minus 6a equals to 0. Take out the common factor for the numbers. The common factor between 9 and 6 is 3. The common factor between a squared and a is a. So that is, therefore, 3a is the common factor that you take out. 3a. And you're left with 3a minus 2 equals to 0. Equate the factors each to 0. 3a minus 2 equals to 0. Therefore, a equals to, divide both sides by 3, that gives you 0. Or 3a equals to 2. Or a, divide both sides by 3, that is 2 over 3. And that is your answer. We've come to the end of this video. See you in the next one. Bye. Thank you for watching.